In Isaiah chapter 20, it's a very short chapter, and it's only 6 little short verses long, and a very odd chapter, wouldn't you say? If you're listening as we read it, a little bit different, might catch you a little bit by surprise as you read that there, what God is asking Isaiah to do in this chapter. But in verse number 1 it says, "In the year that Tartan came unto Ashdod." Now Tartan is the captain of the hosts, the leading general of the military of Assyria, which was a great world empire at that time that was conquering the northern kingdom of Israel. It says, when he came into Ashdod. Now who knows what country the city of Ashdod is in? Anybody know? From the Bible? Philistia, right? Because it's one of the 5 lords of the Philistines. Ashdod, Ekron, Ashkelon, Gath, and so forth. These are the lords of the Philistines. And so when Tartan came unto Ashdod, and he basically destroyed the city, took the Philistines captive, in the same year that he took Ashdod, it says in verse 2, he spake by Isaiah the son of Amoz, saying, "Go and loose the sackcloth from off thy loins, and put off thy shoe from thy foot." And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. And the Lord said, "Like as my servant Isaiah had walked naked and barefoot 3 years, for a sign and wonder upon Egypt and upon Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians prisoners, and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt." Now here we see that the northern kingdom of Israel is who's receiving this sermon, as well as the southern kingdom of Judah. God is preaching to them, not to the Ethiopians, not to the Egyptians, but He's preaching to the Israelites here, through the mouth of Isaiah, about the fact that Egypt and Ethiopia, which were great, powerful empires at this time, He said, "You've seen that Assyria has taken over the Philistines and Ashdod and destroyed them. And now you're afraid that He's going to come and take over your land, and you're leaning upon Egypt and Ethiopia for security." Okay? Now look at the last verse in verse 6. Actually, verse 5. It says, "And they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, and of Egypt, their glory. And the inhabitant of this isle shall say in that day, Behold, such is our expectation, whither we flee for help." Are you listening? "To be delivered from the king of Assyria, and how shall we escape?" Now the Israelites thought that Egypt was going to bail them out. And they had already sent a lot of money and gold and silver down to Egypt to try to buy the protection of Egypt against the king of Assyria. And God's saying, no, wait a minute. Egypt himself and Ethiopia themselves will be led away captive, naked and barefoot and destroyed. They're not going to help you. They're not going to be able to save you. And all throughout Isaiah, a little bit later on in the book, we'll see more of this. God is constantly rebuking His people for leaning upon that bruised reed of Egypt. He said, don't lean on Egypt for protection. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding. And He talks about them leaning on this bruised reed of Egypt. It's like, those reeds that are by the riverside. And some of them are very light in color. And those are very strong and tough. They're dry. But then others are darker in color and they look like they're bruised and they're wet and soft. And if you were to lean upon them, you're going to fall down. They have no firmness to them. They have no strength. And so here they were leaning upon an army of the Egyptians and the Ethiopians to save them. And God's saying, they're not going to save you. They can't save you. Don't rely on them. Rely on me. But that's the meaning of the chapter. That's what the basic chapter is about. Let's close in prayer. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, now let's delve into this a little bit deeper. But first I just want to give you the gist of the chapter. What is God trying to accomplish with this sermon? He's trying to show them the imbecility of leaning on Egypt for help when they're going to suffer the exact same fate that the Philistines just suffered. Now, why did God tell Isaiah to strip off his clothes, strip off his shoes, and preach naked for 3 years? Did you see that? Now, many people will try to gloss this over. They'll try to say, well, if you look it up in the Hebrew, the word naked there actually could mean totally naked or just partially naked. Well, God might have known that somebody might try to get that interpretation. That's why He said in verse 4, look down, He says, "So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians prisoners and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot." Here's where He specifies for you, "even with their buttocks uncovered." You say, oh, well, naked, that just means he took off his coat. And he was just... Come on, it says naked. Okay? It's talking about somebody, let me just define it. Naked means you don't have any clothes on. Okay? And if your buttocks are uncovered, good night. You're naked. Alright? And that's what he's teaching here. Now, you say, wait a minute, come on. Is God teaching nudity? I mean, why would God condone somebody being naked or stripping down nudity? Now, let's stop and think about the chapter. We're going to interpret this, and we're going to look at a lot of things in the Bible, and we're going to deal with this subject of nudity tonight. We're going to use Isaiah 20 to get us into that subject. Now, first of all, is Isaiah's nakedness in Isaiah 20 a positive thing? No. It's a very negative illustration. It's not illustrating anything positive. He's saying here that in the same way that Isaiah has been naked and barefoot for a sign and wonder upon Egypt, he says in verse 4, he says, their buttocks will be uncovered at the end of verse 4, to the shame of Egypt. You see, shame and nakedness are related with one another throughout the Bible. Now, our word today would be a word that the Bible doesn't use, but our word today would be embarrassment. Right? Now think about it. If you were caught naked, you'd be embarrassed. Right? And that's what's referred to as shame. You'd be ashamed of the fact that you didn't have any clothes on. And that's what the Bible's teaching. So the first thing I want you to see is that this is not a positive thing. This is not a positive illustration. This is showing something negative. Now, God is trying to get their attention. And I think He probably did a pretty good job. Okay? Now, He says, this is going to be a sign and a wonder. This is going to be shocking. When they come to hear Isaiah preach, and he has no clothing on. Now, first of all, let me say this. I strongly believe here that there were no women present for this preaching. Because that would be a sin. I mean, for a man to be naked in front of a woman or vice versa is definitely a sin. And the Bible teaches that all throughout Leviticus chapter 18 and other places throughout the Bible. I don't believe that Isaiah was nude in front of the opposite gender. He was only nude in front of other men. That's who he's preaching to here. And so, I'm not saying that he was exposing himself to a mixed group. Now, is it a sin for a man to be nude in front of another man? Obviously not, that God was commanding Isaiah to do it here. Now, is it embarrassing? Yes. Is it shameful? Yes. But is it a sin? No. Because God would not command him to do something that's a sin. Okay? Now, the reason that he did this sermon was he was trying to make a point here and say, look, I'm one man without any clothes on, preaching. And he said, there will be hundreds and thousands of the Ethiopians and Egyptians who will be led away looking just like I'm looking right now, to their shame. And that's who you're relying on for help. That's who you think is going to save you. And that's the point that he's trying to make. But first of all, there's a lot of things we can learn from this chapter. Number one, we see that nakedness is a shameful thing. It's not something to be gloried in or reveled in or something that we should take a picture of and put on a billboard. No, it's something that's very shameful. It's a negative thing to be viewed naked. Now, let me show you throughout the Bible, and you don't have to turn to these scriptures. I'm just going to read these off. But I'm just going to go through the Bible and show you the correlation between nakedness and shame all throughout the Bible. Listen to these scriptures. First, we saw in Isaiah 24, where it said right there, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. Next, Exodus 32:25. The Bible reads, and when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among your enemies. Micah 1:11. Pass ye away, thou inhabitant of Saphir, having thy shame naked. The inhabitant of Zanan came not forth in the morning of Beth-ezel. He shall receive of you his standing. Revelation 3:18. I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear. Are you seeing the pattern here? And anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. Revelation 16:15. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame. Genesis 2:25, being the one exception, reads, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. That's the only time that nudity is appropriate between a man and a woman, is if they're man and wife, if they're married. Isaiah 47, and I will have you turn to this passage. Isaiah 47, verse 2. You're in Isaiah 20, just flip over to Isaiah 47. I mean, there we just saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this will be the 7th, and we have 2 more. Basically 9 or 10 different places in the Bible that that put these two words together. Shame and nakedness. Right, side by side. We're going to make some application on that. Isaiah 47:2, the Bible reads, "Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks. Make bare the leg. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yea, thy shame shall be seen." There it is again. "I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man." Now, what was uncovered in verse number 2? Find the word uncover and tell me what was uncovered. Uncover the thigh. Uncover thy locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh. Pass over the river, right? Look at verse 3. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Okay. Now turn, if you would, to Exodus chapter 28, verse 42. Exodus 28:42. Second book in the Bible is the book of Exodus. Exodus 28:42. The Bible reads, "And thou shalt make them linen breeches," which are pants, would be our modern day word. "Thou shalt make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. From the loins even unto the thighs they shall reach." Now, these pants that God is commanding men to wear, and these are the priest's garments. He's describing exactly the clothing the priest should wear. And he says, well, they're going to need a pair of pants to cover their nakedness. And he said these pants are going to reach from the loins to the thigh. Now, did they go all the way to the ankle? No. Did they go all the way to the ankle? No. They went to the thigh. Okay. Now, you say, well, they went to the thigh. No, they covered the thigh. Because you better know they covered the loins. Okay, so when he says from the loins to the thigh, that's speaking inclusively. So they're covering the loins and the thigh. It was a pair of pants. I guess today you'd call it a long pair of shorts. I mean, we're talking about pants that go from the waist all the way down to the knee, covering the loins and the thighs. He said that why should you wear them? To cover their nakedness. That's exactly what we saw in Isaiah 47, where a woman uncovered her thigh as a way of exposing her nakedness to the world. Now, much as a prostitute would do, would show off their nakedness to try to entice some man into committing filthiness. Now, look at Nahum 3:5, if you would. Nahum 3:5. Say filthiness? Yeah, you know what? Pretty Woman is a lie out of the pit of hell. You know, I remember I talked to a teenage girl, and if you have that movie in your library, you need to throw it out the window and get right with God. This movie from the 80s. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Pretty Woman. I knew a teenage girl in the youth group, and she told me that when she was a child in the 80s, she watched that movie as a 7-year-old girl and decided that she wanted to be a prostitute when she grows up. And it was a Christian girl, grew up in church, Christian home, but was showed that movie and watched prostitution glamorized and said, when I grow up, I want to be a prostitute. Her and her friends said that. I mean, that's how wicked Hollywood is. And I'm going to tell you something, there's nothing glamorous about being a prostitute. And the Bible doesn't call it that either. The Bible calls it being a whore. And being a whore, there's nothing glamorous or wonderful about it or beautiful about it. It's dirty. It's disgusting and unsanitary is what it is. And Hollywood will even try to dress that up and make it look good. But Nahum 3:5, the Bible reads, "Behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will discover thy skirts upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame." One more place, 1 Timothy chapter 2. 1 Timothy chapter 2. Now we see that there's a very clear link in the Bible between nudity and shame. It's a shameful thing to be naked publicly, outside the bounds of just a man and his wife. And I'm here to tell you tonight that being naked in front of the opposite gender is a sin. It's wrong. Look at 1 Timothy chapter number 2. The Bible reads, and this is describing a woman's apparel or her clothing. It says, "In like manner also that women," 1 Timothy 2:9, "in like manner also that women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broided hair or gold or pearls or costly array, but which becometh women professing godliness with good works." Now here we see that women should adorn themselves in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety. What does that mean? What does it mean, shamefacedness? Are they supposed to walk around like, oh man, not looking at anybody? Not like, hey, how you doing? They're afraid like they have to have their face covered like a Muslim, or not ever look anybody in the eye, put their head down. He's saying they need to be clothed in modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety. See, there are people who have no shame. And a person who has no shame is a person who just indiscriminately exposes their nakedness. That's what we can get from the Bible's definition. A person who would just walk down the street half naked or totally naked or exposing their thighs or whatever the case may be, they are a person who is shameless. And God says that a woman should have shamefacedness and sobriety and be clothed. To clothe her body in such a way that her nakedness is not seen. And I'm here to tell you tonight, girls, that when you wear the short shorts, I'm telling you, your nakedness is exposed. And you can say it's not. You can tell me that you're wearing clothing, but according to the Bible, you're naked. If I were to walk in and I was wearing my watch, well, I'm not totally naked because I am wearing something. No, because the part that God described is not covered. I'm exposing my nakedness, and you are doing the same thing when you wear the shorts. And you're doing the same thing when you wear a skirt that does not reach your knee. Now you can go ahead and sugarcoat it. And look, you live in 2008. What do you know about right and wrong? Look at the society you live in. Look how filthy it is. And you think you have some kind of an internal compass that's going to tell you, I just feel like shorts are fine. It doesn't matter what you feel like. The Bible says no.
That's right.
Now look, of course you think shorts and short skirts are fine. You think it's fine to go down to the beach in a bathing suit also, to show off your buttocks also, like the Bible said in Isaiah 20, and to show off your thighs, and to show off your nakedness to the world. You think that's fine too, because you grow up in a society that's become nude. That's why you think it's okay. And it doesn't matter whether you think it's okay. God said no. God said it's a shame. He said you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And He said ladies need to have enough shame and dignity to clothe themselves in a way that would cover their nakedness.
Right.
Modest apparel with shamefacedness and sobriety. You see, and turn if you would back to Isaiah 20. But you see, we live in the day of situational ethics. And you're not going to convince me for 1 second that Isaiah was walking around a bunch of ladies totally naked. You're not going to convince me of that. Because I know that God's not going to ask him to do something that's a sin. God's not going to ask him to do something that would be violating the Scriptures. God has never done that throughout the Bible. He never tells somebody to sin. And so I'm telling you right now, He's preaching to men. Now, we live in a day where people make excuses and they want to try to skirt God's rules and they try to push everything. And let me say, you say, are you against mixed swimming? I'm not against mixed swimming. Okay? You know, if you're dressed like you are right now and you want to go jump in the water somewhere, go ahead. Hey, we were on the church camping trip. I jumped in that lake. I jumped off the end of the dock with my pants on, my shirt on, with everything on. Were there ladies there? Sure, but I wasn't naked.
Right.
I'm not against mixed swimming. I'm against mixed nudity.
Right.
Now, you may think that God is going to make an exception for you. And just ask yourself this question. You've got to think these things through. Let's say a lady walked in right now, wearing a bikini right now, and sat down in the front row. Is there anybody that would think that that's appropriate? Nobody would think that's acceptable. I mean, even in the most liberal church in America, if even just a one-piece bathing suit, if a girl just walked in and just a one-piece bathing suit, sat down in the front row, people would consider it obscene. I literally believe that if a girl walked into this church, and this is the church where we don't have rules, we don't have a dress code, but I guarantee you that if a girl walked in wearing a bikini and said, somebody would be saying, like, here, you know, it's kind of cold in here, you know, you want to put this on? It's a little chilly, right? You know that would be the case. And yet, if you dig a hole in the ground and put a bunch of water in it and build a cast iron fence around it, suddenly it becomes acceptable to wear what was deemed obscene only hours ago. But that's the way I grew up. I mean, I literally grew up being taught that, you know, mixed bathing is fine. I went to a Christian school when I was growing up. And it's called Victory Christian School in Carmichael, California. And guess what? At school, the girls had to wear skirts down to their knee. And the boys had to tuck in their shirt, and they had to have their hair cut, and they couldn't touch their ears or their collar. But the same exact school, when we'd go to camp, the girls could wear fingertip-length shorts, which is, you know, halfway up their thigh. And then at the exact same school, we would have swim parties, and you could go swimming, and the girls would just wear next to nothing. And we'd go swimming with them in their underwear, basically, is what they're wearing. Now, my friend, that's hypocrisy. Right. That's Pharisaical. Right. They're putting on the outward appearance when the parents are there, picking up their kids and dropping them off. But then when the parents are not around at the swim party and the camping trip, the clothes come off, the shame goes out the window, and nakedness abounds. It's wrong. God said throughout Leviticus 18 not to uncover the nakedness of the opposite gender. Only your wife's nakedness should be uncovered. By a man, that is. Only his wife's nakedness should be seen. Now, there are so many areas where we let this go. Number one area is when it comes to swimming. We think all of a sudden it's okay to be nude. It's all of a sudden okay to expose your nakedness. I remember when I was a teenager, at the church that I went to, it was a church that preached the NIV and had a rock band and all this stuff. And we went to this church, and they would have, instead of church throughout the summer, they would cancel Wednesday night church. And they would have what was called pool and devotions for the teenagers. Pool and devotions. And we would go to the home of a male gynecologist of the church there. And he lived in a gated community, and it was so rich and fancy. I mean, this guy was just a millionaire. I mean, he had this great big giant house, and we'd go there, and we'd swim in the backyard. And for an hour and a half, we just swam, and these girls are just in their bikinis. Maybe one of them would have a one-piece swimsuit. The rest of them are wearing bikinis. Not that there's any difference, because it's still nakedness. Right. Oh, wear a modest one-piece. That's an oxymoron. What is it, coveralls? What is it, a jumpsuit? I mean, think about it. A modest one. That's what you used to say when you get letters home from the Christian school and from church camping trips. Have the girls bring a modest one-piece. How is it modest? Oh, well, don't worry, her belly button's covered up, but her thighs and her buttocks are exposed. Is that okay? No, it's not okay. And so, I can't believe you'd say that. I'm not saying anything that the Bible didn't say, my friend. Right. And you know what? You're offended that I'm saying it, and you're going to go home on the TV and watch it? That's hypocrisy. I mean, you don't want me to say the word buttocks? You don't want me to say the word thigh? But then you're going to go home, and I'm going to promise you can't turn on that TV for 59 minutes and 59 seconds without seeing women's thighs and buttocks on that TV. And you know that's right. It's the truth. You say, buttocks? Look, and this thing about the girls with their carpenter crack, you say, I can't believe you say that. I can't believe that I see it all the time. Yeah. I mean, I'd never seen that until I was an adult. Because now it's the style. The lowrider pants. It was never the style in the past. I've never seen it my whole life. And now all of a sudden the cool thing is for girls to let their rear end be seen from the top of their skirt to the top of their pants. God help us. And you even see Christian young ladies with their skirts on, and they say, I'm wearing a skirt, I'm following the rules. But it's a lowrider skirt, and it's wicked. Don't get offended at the preacher who describes to you what's going on and preaches against the sin that's infested America and infested our churches. Get mad at the sin. Don't get mad at the guy who's rebuking the sin. Somebody's got to get up and cry aloud and bring this stuff up. But you see, we're at the pool and devotions, and what do you think the guys are doing? They're feasting their eyes on the bodies of these young girls, and I'm telling you something, it's wicked. And you know what? Those girls that you're looking at, young man, those girls someday are going to be married to somebody else. And maybe he would appreciate it if not everybody in the world had already looked on his wife's nakedness before he got to her. And you have to understand that, and a lot of ladies don't understand this. They don't understand that men's eyes are allured to the lust of the flesh. And a lot of ladies, they think, nobody's looking at me, no big deal. Look, you don't understand the wickedness of the heart of man. I mean, if you're walking around in a bathing suit, guys are looking at you, and they're not thinking righteous, godly thoughts. Now, I hate to be the one to tell you that. And you can act like I'm crazy and say that I'm wicked, or that's just the way my mind works. No, my friend, I'm just being honest with you and telling you that if you look at naked women, you can't think pure thoughts as a man. Right. That's why God says, I will set no wicked thing before my eyes is the standard. He didn't say, well, look at it, but don't think the bad thought. Look at it, but keep your mind clean. That's impossible. Right. That's why Jesus said that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. He says, and if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out. He didn't say lobotomize part of your brain and stop thinking wrong. He said, no, the problem is your eye. That's what needs to go. He said, if you have a lust problem, what you need to do is remove your eye. Because the problem goes back to your eye. Because he says the sin is when you looked at it. Not just the thought that you thought, but the fact that you were looking. You see, the Bible describes 3 different lusts in the book of 1 John chapter 2, verse 15. Where he said, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And you have to understand there's a difference between the lust of the flesh and the pride of life. And the lust of the eyes. If I'm looking at a woman to lust after her, thinking ungodly thoughts or fantasize, that's the lust of the flesh. Because I'm lusting after flesh. But if I'm just wanting to look at something, just to look, just for the sake of looking, the Bible says, lust not after her beauty in thy heart. That's only visual. That has nothing to do with it. He said, lust not after her beauty in thy heart. That is the lust of the eyes. And I'm going to tell you something. The lust of the flesh is not the only sin. The lust of the eyes is another sin. And when you look at a woman that is dressed improperly, that's nude, that has her thighs exposed, you say, what do you do when you're in public? And I look the other way, and that's what you ought to do. If I'm walking through the store, or I'm walking down the street, and I see some picture, or in real life, some lady that's dressed wrong, you look the other way. I know this sounds basic, but people don't believe this anymore. They think it's okay, just keep your mind pure. Who are you kidding? Don't look at it. It's wrong to look at it. And young people experiment with pornography, and they think it's okay. I'm just looking at it out of curiosity. No, you're not. You're fulfilling the wicked lust of your eyes. And it's a sin even to look upon that which is wicked according to the Bible. He said, I'll set no wicked thing before my eyes. You say, well, I can watch all the girls on TV and it doesn't make me think bad thoughts. It doesn't matter. You've already sinned by looking at it. You've already fulfilled the lust of the eyes. And so nudity is a sin. Looking upon that which is nude is a sin, according to the Bible. Now, back to our friend that's the male gynecologist that we swam in his backyard. Here's another cultural blind spot. Why is it, and I remember, let me just tell you a story. And I know I'm stepping on toes tonight, but that's all right. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to say this stuff. Why do I always have to be the bad guy? Huh? I wish I could be just a nice preacher. Maybe in someday, somewhere over the rainbow, I can just be a nice preacher. But I have to be the big jerk up here that tells people this stuff because they're not going to hear it anywhere else.
Right. They won't.
I got to say it. When I was a young person, I'd been married for just less than a year, about a year. There was another guy in our church in Sacramento that was getting married, and he had just gotten married. He was just about the point where he was going to have kids, and I took that young guy aside and I said, hey, let me ask you about something. I said, I just got married a year ago. I said, you just got married a couple weeks ago, and our first child's on the way. You're probably going to have a child in your very near future. And I said to him, I said, have you ever thought about that? I said, I was just choosing a doctor for my wife to go to because, she's pregnant and she's going to be seeing the OBGYN. And I said, I opened the phone book and there were all these men's names listed. And my first thought was, there's no way. No way is she going to one of these guys. These bunch of perverts. That's the first thing I thought. And so I looked at that list and I said, no way. And I said to him, and he looked at me kind of funny. And I said to him, let me ask you something. I said, could you go do that job and not think of bad thoughts? Could you go to work and your job is to look at people nude and you could just keep a clean mind? And he said, no. He's just being honest. It wasn't anything wicked. He's just telling it, no. Couldn't just look at that all day and keep a clean mind. And I said, are you saved? He said, yes. Do you love Jesus? Yes. You love the Bible? Yes. You love God? You love soul winning? Yes. I said, okay. Does he love God? Is he saved? You know what I mean? Now look at Titus chapter 1. Titus chapter number 1. I said, now wait a minute. So you're telling me you're a godly, righteous Christian who goes soul winning, comes to church 3 times a week, reads the Bible and prays every day, and you couldn't do it with a clean mind? But you think that all these guys listed in the phone book can do it with a clean mind? I said, does that make any sense to you? He said, no, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. And he said, you're right. He's like, I need to make sure that I'm going to tell my wife this immediately because she needs to find a female doctor. If she's going to go strip down and do all, and have the necessary examinations done, hey, it's going to be a woman.
Right.
But you know, it's funny because I explained that to several other people, and every time I've ever explained that to a single guy or a newly married guy, they all agreed with me, hands down, 100%. Yeah. But try and explain it to the guy whose wife's been going to the male gynecologist for years. Yeah. That's the guy that's going to tell you you're out of your mind.
Right.
He doesn't want to face it. He doesn't want to accept it. Hey, it's the truth. Just face it. And I'll prove it to you from the Bible right now. Look at Titus chapter 1, verse 15. The Bible says, "Unto the pure, all things are pure. But unto them that are defiled," and what's the next word? Unbelieving. "Is nothing pure. But even their mind and conscience is defiled." Do you see that? Is nudity pure to the unbelieving mind? Absolutely. I mean, you say, well, what if they're a Christian? What if they're saved? What if they're Christian? What if they're saved? Look, if they're a Christian and they're saved, then they should know even better the sin of looking on nakedness and nudity. That makes them even more wicked and perverted. Let alone the unbelieving mind to which nothing is pure. Now, look, don't tell me that these guys have he's a nice old man. That just means he's been doing it for the last 50 years. Yeah. Think about that. Now, you say, well, wait a minute, Pastor Anderson. He's so used to it. I mean, he's seen it hundreds of times, thousands of times. It means nothing to him anymore. If that were the case, then the best thing for all of us to do, all of us guys, if you have, let's say you have a lust problem, what you should do, just look at it as much as you can. Get it out of your system, right? Just get it over with, right? Just look at it all, see it all, try it all, and then you'll be fine. Everybody knows that when you indulge the lust of the flesh, it only gets worse. That's the truth. I mean, the more you feed it, it becomes a monster that's out of control. It's the truth. I mean, it's that way with any appetite. Yep. Okay? You know what? You smoke, after you've smoked so many cigarettes, pretty soon you just get sick of them and don't want to smoke anymore. No. The more you smoke, the more addicted you become. Yeah. The more you drink. Pretty soon you drank, and it's enough. You're just desensitized to it. No. The more you drink, the more you want to drink. The more you do drugs, the more you become addicted to drugs. The more you look at the dirty television and the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh, the more it will control you. Because when you feed the flesh, it grows and becomes more powerful and stronger. Right. And so the nice old man that's been doing it for year after year and decade after decade has just become more and more and more wicked.
Right.
Every time he looks at it, he's becoming sicker. Because it's unnatural for one man to look on the nakedness of 1,000 women.
Right.
And it's totally warping his mind and making him sick in his mind, seeing it again and again and again and again. This is the truth. And so listen to me, young man, or even middle-aged man, as you see the billboard and see the magazine, just remember that every time you look at that billboard, and every time you look at that magazine, and every time you flip on the TV or movie and look at those images of women dressed indecently, you are making your lust grow stronger. It's the truth. I mean, all you're doing is just feeding the craving. You're just feeding it. I mean, listen to me. I'm not craving heroin right now. I've never even tried heroin. I'm not craving beer tonight. I've never even tasted beer. I'm not craving cigarettes. Let me make a confession to you tonight. I've smoked one cigarette in my life. Woo! When I was a teenager, I smoked a cigarette one time. But you know what? I have no craving for cigarette. Okay, because I only smoked one. And I'm not recommending that you smoke one. Come on, smoke one. Just see what it's like. No, don't do it. What I'm saying is, I've smoked one cigarette in my life. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not craving cigarettes. And but think, what if I would have smoked 20? What if I would have smoked 40? What if I would have smoked 50? You say, well, Pastor Anderson, the more that you smoked, the stronger your craving will be tonight. And that's the truth. I have zero craving because it was one cigarette, 10, 12, whatever years ago. I don't remember when it was. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that whenever you feed your lust, it grows. And so every time you give in to temptation, you're weakening your spirit and strengthening your flesh. Every time you resist that temptation, you're strengthening your spirit, and the temptation is dying. and the lust is shrinking, and the flesh is getting weaker. Okay? And that's what you have to understand. Every time, and look, man, you say, I don't know why you're preaching about this. This is a big issue today.
That's right.
Say, oh, this is a silly sermon. I can't believe you go on and on about this. I couldn't go on and on enough about this. This is a big issue.
That's right.
I mean, this is something that if you're a man in this room tonight, you're going to be faced with for the rest of your life living in America, being exposed to all this garbage. You can't even go hardly to the store without seeing it. You can't go hardly anywhere without the temptation. And so you better get these scriptures down in your heart. I'll set no wicked thing before my eyes. Because I'm going to tell you something. You're going to be quoting that verse to yourself for the rest of your life. Because you're every day going to be confronted with images that you should not look at. And you're going to have to force yourself to look the other way. You're going to have to force yourself and say, I will not look at that which is wicked. I will set no wicked thing before my eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me. Job said this, I made a covenant with my eyes. How then should I think on a maid? You see, you don't think on a maid when you make a covenant with your eyes. See where it starts? Your eyes. Your eyes are the part of your body that cause you to lust after a maid. And so Job said, I made a covenant with my eyes. I made a deal with my eyes. I said, listen, eyes, you're not going to look at it. You're not going to look where you want to look. You're going to look where I want you to look. And it's not going to be on that which is nude and wicked. Now listen, men, don't think that this is a small sin. Glancing at something and sometimes something catches your eye, you can't control that. But when you take that second look, that's a sin. I mean, if something comes in front of your eyes, now if you turn on the TV, come on, you're asking, come on, devil, hit me. But when you're walking down the street and you see some girl that's exposed in some wicked way, and come on, man, it happens every day if you live in America, if you're out and about. Let's face the reality. I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you tonight, okay? You can find some preacher that'll stand up here and lie to you, and he'll tell you that everything's wonderful and fine, and this is not even an issue. This is an issue.
Right.
And I'm up here telling you the truth tonight. And you ought to appreciate the fact that somebody's telling you the truth about this. Amen. You walk down the street and you see that which is wrong. The temptation is there. If you're a normal man, the temptation is there to take the second look. And you've got to quote yourself these scriptures. You've got to be in control of your eyes like Job did. You've got to get your eyes by the reins and say, you're going to look where I tell you to look. Because if you just let your eyes wander where they want to wander, they're going to look at that which is wrong. It's the truth. You've got to get control of your eyes. Because if you don't, when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin when it is finished, bringeth forth death. You say, oh, I'm just going to look, and that's going to be the end of it. No, if you don't understand, keep feeding it, it's going to get out of control. And pretty soon it'll get worse and worse and worse and worse. It's going to lead you into other sins. And so you better just nip it in the bud at the eyes before it gets to the lust of the flesh. And you got to get your eyes under control. And I'm going to tell you something. I've explained this, like I said, to young men, and it was explained to me as a young man, and I received it, thank God. But you try to explain this to people who've grown up in this society, and they've been mixed swimming for 30 years, and their wife's going to the male gynecologist and being examined all the time and everything. They don't get it. I mean, they don't see it anymore because they're desensitized to it. But I'm not. And would to God that you wouldn't be either. And so, back to Isaiah 20, I just wanted to go into that a little bit. And I don't want you to walk away thinking that God's condoning nudity here. First of all, we saw this a very negative example of nakedness. It's a shameful thing. It's exposing the shame that the Egyptians and the Ethiopians are going to be humiliated by being forced to march through the land naked as captives, all the way from Egypt to Assyria. God's not condoning nakedness. Obviously, this nakedness is not occurring in mixed company. Whenever you'll find somebody who's taking off their clothes in the Bible as a man, it's never in mixed company. For example, we read on Sunday night, King Saul. You remember the sermon? 1 Samuel 19. It was only men that were there when he rent his garment and was therefore left naked, according to the Bible. Out of sorrow and distress and agony, he rent his clothing. But he was in the presence of only men. Peter, of course, in John 21, when he was fishing, was naked at one point, but he was only in the presence of men. It's very clearly delineated who was on the ship with him. Okay? And so, to take this chapter and say, well, this is condoning nudity in front of the opposite gender is false. It's bizarre. It's contradictory. You can't pull something out of context. You got to look at it in the context and the scope of the whole Bible. But at the same time, we're not going to gloss this over and say that Isaiah was not really naked, because the Bible clearly says that he was naked. Now, what's funny to me is that people get upset sometimes that I yell when I preach. And they say, why do you have to yell when you preach? Why do you have to scream at people? You know, they say, why can't you just let God's Word be powerful and just talk?